if you are running a protocol and using a coin that regularly changes the very foundations of the rules that govern the network, then you've got nothing. Ethereum saying, oh, we went from inflationary to disinflationary. No, the promises are not worth anything. This is why Bitcoin, because I want these qualities, but I'm also very, very certain that these qualities are not going to change.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Hosting Bitcoin. Today we've got the man himself, BTC Sessions, otherwise known as Ben in some circles. And if you haven't seen Ben before online, I don't know what rock you've been living under, because he is the most prolific educator in our space and has been doing it for longer than anybody. So really excited to have you on, and thanks for sharing your afternoon with me, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words. It's odd having started all those years ago, wondering, I wonder if anybody's going to watch this, to now, having somebody say that to start off a podcast.
I remember you in a previous video talked about at one point being worried if there would be enough content to create around the Bitcoin space.
It's never been a problem. It's so the list of stuff to cover is growing far faster than I could ever hope to cover it, to the point where actually coming up here in less than a month, I'm going to have another new face join me on the channel to help with more tutorials. So get ready, because we're about to double our output of tutorials soon.
Wow. So how do you, in the face of, no limit of things that you could be talking about, I saw a recent post from you on Twitter where you were kind of polling the audience on what they wanted to see next from you. But how do you make the decision on what you actually talk about, what you actually teach about? Is it personal interest, crowdsourcing, or some mix?
It's a little bit of a mix, and it's also dependent on, funny enough, where we are in the price cycle. Because when there's a lot of newcomers coming in, the other aspect of it is that you need to kind of get a little bit back to basics. You need to serve up people stuff that's going to be newcomer friendly. You always need to have that check on yourself of, hey, am I explaining this sufficiently, or am I glossing over things that I take for granted, but newcomers will have no idea what I just said. So there's that aspect. Whereas in the bear markets, the people that are around are the people that have been around. There's not a ton of newcomers in the doldrums of 80% price drops. But those people are in it, and they've got time to learn. And so that's when I find I can get these kind of, we'll say, deeper dive hardcore learns through more technical stuff. I think that's a perfect opportunity for that. So right now it's a little bit of a mix, because obviously also personal preference comes into it, and there's some stuff I just want to do, and so it's walking a tightrope, we'll say.
What are the things that stick out to you right now as personally interesting? I know before we got on and started recording, you were playing around with the future bit. Like what drives your curiosity at this point?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. So in the vein of the future bit, and anybody unfamiliar, this is basically a plug and play home miner that you can use, that also has a full node in it. So in that realm, I think the rise of these easily accessible home miners, as we'll call it, education conversation pieces, and split with like a forever lottery ticket type thing. I love this idea where people will just have those in their homes, perhaps eventually just kind of integrated into their regular electronics, or as part of their router, or space heaters, or whatever it may be. But I really dig this idea of bringing back the idea of a lot more people are mining from home, even if it's not like a profitable exercise per se. Like you're not banking a bunch of money, but for a space heater, you're getting a little bit of money back on your power if you were going to be running one anyways. And I think if somebody's already buying lottery tickets, then just nix that and get yourself like a future bit or a BitX or a Brains has a mini miner. Like just get something like that for a few $100, plug that in, and then your dopamine hit can be checking every morning to see if you hit a block. Like there you go. Like that's all you need. But the point being that if a lot of people start doing this, then it can start to move the needle a little bit on miner centralization. And also projects like the BitX, where it's open source, it also pushes more people and more hardware and chip manufacturers to perhaps look at that as a selling point for their devices down the road. So yeah, I think that's one of the more interesting things that's going on right now. There's plenty more though.
There's always more, but I love the focus on bringing mining into the home, because obviously we're a mining company, but unless you have a chance to come and do a physical site visit, it's all conceptual to you. And this I've found to be one of the biggest barriers when educating people on Bitcoin and getting them to build intuition around it, is that there's nothing for you to touch and really like get your hands on. It's just this concept to you that's just numbers on a screen. And it's nice, but you don't get to build this education, intuition that gives you skills to navigate the rest of the Bitcoin space. Have you found that to be true in like hardware devices and these home miners, like as much as you can bring it into the physical world, that people can grasp it a little better?
Yeah, yeah, and I think the proof is in the pudding here, because things like the BitX and FutureBit and the Brains Mini Miner, and I think Canaan just has a couple home devices that are out right now or are coming out. But all this stuff, they sell like hotcakes. Like people like, and it's not like they're marketed as, oh, you're going to make a ton of money. But people, they just have a curiosity. They like tinkering. They like weekend projects. They like learning. And there's there is no better way to learn than to actually do. And so the learning mechanism becomes the device itself. And so you actually you get in there, you plug it in, you boot it up, you see the hash rate going, you connect to a mining pool, you connect to your wallet, you whatever, or solo mine, whatever you're doing there. But you start to understand what is a blind spot for a lot of people, myself included. I didn't know much about a lot of the aspects of mining, because I just had never done it, because it didn't really make sense for me to do it living in a city. But now, I've a couple of years ago, I made a space heater out of an S9. I've got BitAxes and the NerdAxe, and I've got the Brains Mini Miner. I've got the FutureBit going here. I want to try those Canon devices. And so, yeah, like there's a definite curiosity. People are hungry for stuff like this, and I love it. And so I hope to see more of it. And it makes me feel better that I don't have as much of a blind spot where I used to.
If you were going to start someone's just coming into the space, when you're trying to get them kind of from 0 to 1 in their educational journey, if you were going to give them something physical to work with, would you give them a hardware wallet? Would you give them a home miner or a node? How would you open the gates for them to learn the most?
There's two different answers to this, but I think there's an optimal answer in terms of somebody continuing their learning journey to the utmost that they can. And so, yes, you could start with, like, if you're trying to be, the perfect Bitcoiner, and you want to like not make any concessions, and you don't trust verify from the get-go, then yeah, you're going to start running a node, you're going to start doing all that, and then you're going to then create wallets and integrate those and connect those to your node and all that. But most people don't learn that way. Most people need to they need to be given the lowest hanging fruit first, and then they need to be incentivized to continue their learning journey. And so you've got to kind of drop breadcrumbs for people like, hey, you can buy some Bitcoin. And number one priority is let's start learning self custody. Like, let's just get a hot wallet on your phone. You're going to write down your seed words. You're going to remove it from the exchange into your own custody. That's a win already. Then there's okay, well, your phone is only as secure as the phone itself. Like the funds on your phone are only as secure as the device itself, and that's connected to the internet. That's not ideal. So like you're not going to walk around with your life savings in your pocket. You shouldn't treat Bitcoin that way either. And so like if you build up beyond say $1,000 or whatever, and not to mention price movements, you want to treat it as if it's worth a lot more than it currently is, then let's start you down the pathway of hardware. So my long-winded answer of that is I think the natural progression is get Bitcoin, learn self-custody, learn cold storage. If you can get those 3 steps, some people stop at that point, and that's fine. But if you can sprinkle a few more breadcrumbs and you've already successfully got to that point, people are much more likely to continue down the path. And everybody's going to, kind of go as far as they can if they're presented it in the right way. But I think that's kind of the most simplistic and most sensical way of doing it. But like, yeah, I mean, then you can bring up, well, you're on hardware, and maybe you might want to run a node. Like that'd be a fun weekend project. And then you're really, really like, don't trust verify. Like your wallet is, you've got a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain, and like and it becomes a curiosity. And then, home mining and stuff like that can come in. And so there's just this never ending pathway to go down. And by never ending, I mean, it splits off into all these different branches where you can learn about a whole bunch of different things. So yeah, start simple. And, I always find it funny when there's criticism of, well, you're on a hot wallet and you don't have hardware, or you got your first $5 of Bitcoin from somebody on a custodial Lightning wallet. And like, yes, we understand. We know that's not the ideal place to be. If you did a demo of sending $1 to somebody, that's also like, how are you going to do that non-custodially? But the point is that you set somebody down their path and you provide them a framework so that they can move forward. Because if the first thing you greet them with is, hey, you just got here on your Bitcoin learning journey, here's the pathway behind me. We're going to start by running a node and then linking all of these things and hardware, and we're going to get a multi-sig, and they're going to turn right around and they'll be right back home instead of starting down that pathway. So don't make fun of somebody because they're taking their first baby steps on that pathway. That should be celebrated, and you should encourage them to continue going. You're not going to make fun of a kid for not being able to read the entirety of human action or the sovereign individual as they're learning the alphabet. So like, let's get through the alphabet here, and then we'll continue.
One thing I love about your background that's unique in the Bitcoin space is that you came in from the arts perspective. So you're a dance instructor, a cappella singer at some point. You came at this from a non-technical lens. And I think what glitches a lot of people up is just what you were talking about, the engineering speak, the tendency of many of us with engineering backgrounds to launch into whatever the most complicated and nuanced topic we can find that day is. How do you think of building the composition of someone's educational journey? I know it depends a lot on the individual.
Yeah, I love that framing, the composition of somebody's educational journey, because it can vary from person to person. Again, I try to approach this from the most sensical pathway that gets me from, let's say with a single concept, gets me from a beginning point to an end point. And I recognize that there's no real end point in your learning journey, but like for a particular concept, like let's say I'm looking at a particular tutorial, I like to first enter into that video saying, is there any prerequisite knowledge? Like, is this a good starting point for you right now? Because oftentimes the answer is no. You should go back and you should learn something else. And I can't start from scratch in every video. Some videos, if I'm starting and say I'm working on the FutureBit home miner, and there's a part where they're going to have to get a Bitcoin address, there's not going to be a tutorial on how a Bitcoin wallet works. So it's like, you should know the following things. If you don't know the following things, look down below, go back to this video first, and then come back here when you're ready. I think that frames it as rather than somebody clicking and being like, oh God, I missed like 7 of those points. I have no idea what's going on here. Bitcoin isn't for me. No, it's not that it's not for you. It's that you haven't done the other things. It's like you're watching Avengers Endgame and you missed the prior 18 films and you're mad that you don't understand what's happening. So it's like there's an element of framing where in your learning journey you should be in order to tackle the task at hand. Then it's just starting from bare bones basics, understanding that, okay, somebody already has this piece of knowledge. What's the next logical step? What is this thing? Why do you want to use it? What's important about it? Let's get through the basic setup. Okay, let's just get this thing so that it's ready to function. Once someone has gone through the process to get everything functioning and set up, then and we do an overview of where are the buttons, where are the menus, just kind of general navigation. Then it's just going through the logical sequence of what somebody needs to do to use the product or the app or whatever it is. So, with a wallet, well, you don't have any money, you're going to receive, and you're going to receive from a person or from an exchange or whatever. You have money, you're going to want to use it at some point, you're going to send. Okay, great. How do you do that? And then it becomes, well, beyond sending and receiving, maybe there's some little tweaks that you want to know about, fees and just general proper management, backups, recoveries, just kind of starting with the simplest and then getting into kind of the weeds towards the end so that they get this excellent understanding of where should I have been? Here's the foundation of, what we're doing here and why. Here's the getting everything, all my ducks in a row so that I can use this thing. And then let's start with the basics of using it all the way up to some of the advanced bits. And then just cap it off with a summary so people can kind of mentally go through, okay, here's what I did and what I accomplished today. So I find like having that nice pathway and having it segmented into those individual pieces, it makes it more bite-sized and accessible. And, it's like, if you read a book and the chapters are a little shorter, it feels easier to get through. Whereas you hit a book and like the next chapter is like 78 pages. You're like, oh God, this is really wearing on me. So the more you can kind of segment it up and make it like little bites, then I think that's a bit more of a successful path. And that pertains to an individual topic, but it also pertains to your greater education journey as a whole. Learn this little piece. Here's your video for the day. All right, let's move on to the next thing. So that's how I tend to approach it.
So when you break down the process of making content that's accessible for people, what were some of the skills that you had to personally learn to get your content to be more accessible to people and help them on that journey? Because our goal as educators is to bring them as far in as we can, and you can only meet people so far, but you've got to develop new skills for that.
Yeah. So I luckily had a number of those prerequisite things just from other aspects of my life. So, you mentioned I was in the arts before. And so I guess being personable and friendly and being able to speak in front of a camera and being comfortable with that. So that was one aspect of it, and making it entertaining and engaging throughout. That's one aspect. The other aspect is actually being able to break things down and being cognizant of the way you're speaking and qualifying words when they come up and they're new. Hey, this means this, or throwing in those little reminders. Oh, if you're unfamiliar, just so you know, this term refers to such and such. And so that for me came from, yes, I was in the arts, but I taught little kids how to breakdance. And so having taught young kids relatively complex movements, it's the same skill set, whether you're teaching breakdancing or, tech to adults. You still have to break it down into pieces and make it accessible. So there's that part of it. And then I just had some cursory knowledge of basic video editing, just from vacations and travel. Like we would always take videos as a family and just kind of clip them apart. So it all just kind of played together. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to fit in the Bitcoin space. I started with doing events that were arts related, but incorporating Bitcoin into it. Like, oh, come watch a bunch of musical artists, and we're going to put QR codes overlaid on pictures of them on the wall. When you get a ticket, you get Bitcoin with your ticket, and then you can tip the artists with the QR codes. And so that was kind of my first foray. But then in educating people at those events and kind of piecing together, oh, there's all these things coming together, and me wanting to learn more and knowing that there was no video content at the time, or very little. I don't know, just divine intervention and a whole bunch of different things resulted in being here today on this podcast.
Bitcoin mining allows you to acquire Bitcoin at a lower cost than buying Bitcoin outright, and produces consistent results. At Abundant Minds, we take care of setup, maintenance, and performance so that your miners can run efficiently. It's a straightforward way to grow your Bitcoin stack without the guesswork. Book a call to start now. I would find it far more intimidating to try to learn how to break dance than I would to learn something technical. But I totally respect that that's a hard gap for a lot of people to bridge. And there's so many people who don't get deeper into this space because they're afraid of getting into a more technical field. And I think your personal backstory is inspiring to those people. But what would you usually say to people who are intimidated by getting into this space because they're scared of being non-technical in a highly technical field?
Yeah, I think it's important that people know they don't need to know everything right away. The only important thing is that you recognize where are you at and what's the next step. So, and that's all you need to focus on ever is, what am I doing next? What's the next best thing for me to do to make me better off, more secure? And so if people approach it that way, rather than going, oh God, I got to learn exchanges, wallets, hardware, multi-sig, nodes, mining. No, you don't. You have to, if you want Bitcoin, you're going to get some Bitcoin first, and then you're going to get a wallet. That's it. There you go. not a big deal. So yeah, and furthermore, I would say that at some point, every single person had to learn online banking, right? Like it was a foreign concept to every single person at some point. And people that had never used computers before. I would venture to say that most people who are my age, their parents use online banking, and they did not grow up with the internet. And so it's not that it's impossible. It's that you learn by doing. And to be honest, online banking is way harder than setting up a Bitcoin wallet. The difference there with online banking, of course, is that you have perceived protections in that, yeah, like if you get scammed or something, then there's insurance and things like that. But you pay the price for that in other ways, right? Like you don't have true control of your money, and downstream of that, nobody has true control of the money other than the people that print the money. And so like there's all these externalities to, oh, good. If somebody scams me out of a few $100, I could probably get that back. Well, at what cost? And so, there is a real, there is real personal responsibility that comes into play, but we have personal responsibility every day for so many other things. If you have a passport, you know personal responsibility. You know how to keep that thing safe. If you have children, You have ultimate responsibility. Don't lose those. That's bad. So like you have a lot of personal responsibility in so many other things, and we've been fed this lie that you can't possibly take care of your own money. It's completely untrue. You just have to, be careful, as you are with many other things throughout your life. Sometimes mistakes happen. Everybody's lost some cash sometime. Crap, where'd that $50 go? Fell in my pocket. And you're mad about it, and it sucks. Okay, well, that's it's the price of tuition. Sometimes next time, don't cram cash in a random set of jeans and toss them in the wash. You learn by doing, and actions have consequences, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Everybody's capable of this stuff. Just got to put in a little bit of time, as you would with any other thing that you learn about and now regularly do.
You're totally right. And agree that just because something is unfamiliar does not mean that it's necessarily more difficult. And that was definitely my early experience. It wasn't necessarily any harder to get into using Bitcoin tools. It was just different. It was structured differently. It was this very new way of thinking. But to your point, working with online banking was one of those early experiences that probably orange pilled me harder than almost any other experiences, having wires stopped or, payments halted, whatever it may be. This is long before I was spending all of my time in the Bitcoin space. Like, there has to be something better than this. This is just so frustrating. I can't believe that people use this and don't complain about it every day.
Yeah. I mean, I, at this point, really, really don't like having money in banks. I seldom do beyond what I absolutely have to. And that it makes my life so much better. It's just so much better having control over your own money. And you're right. I think people just use these tools, like in terms of legacy financial system. People use those because they aren't really aware that there's an alternative. And to be fair, the alternative, if you're actually using it day to day and living on it, you have to learn the hoops to jump through to make that possible. There are tools out there to make it possible, but there's effort to be had in just stringing together, like, how am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to get groceries and things like that? So there's an exploration that is involved at this stage of the game where it's possible, but there's legwork that is required in order to string together those services and businesses and the things that will allow you to function. But a lot of people are just, they're using it as a savings mechanism, which is totally fine for the stage that we're at. I just like being one of those crazy people that's like so far beyond that, where I have as few dollars as possible. But yeah, I mean, it's a journey, and people will get there, and eventually I'm going to be obsolete. Like, that's the goal, right? Like, I shouldn't be needed at some point. And so, nobody, it's seldom that you're looking up a video on how to do online banking, right? That you have online banking, and it's just, even if it's not, even if the design is horrible and it's not intuitive, you kind of muddle your way. Okay, here's the area that I have to do this, and you're trying to figure it out, and it sucks, but you do it anyways. But you're not looking up tutorials for it. I firmly believe that it at some point in time I'll be completely obsolete in terms of what I'm doing right now. Maybe there'll be other aspects of it that I can continue to educate with, but that'll be a win. If it gets to if it's like, why would, if I start seeing comments, why would I watch this? Everybody knows how to do this. Thank you. My job here is done. That's what I'm hoping for.
Pass the torch on to the next generation.
Yes, exactly.
One that actually brings me to one of the coolest things that I think you've been talking about recently, which is, if you are going to do the leg work and actually use your legs and go somewhere physical, there is a place to do that now in your locality. You've got the Calgary Sats Market What is that like? Because that's one of the coolest things that most people don't realize, that you can actually spend your Bitcoin for something, and that there are people who will accept it, and you can use this as part of the
Yeah.
circular economy. What is that like?
I love it. So this came about, even though it's very community based, and it's like, oh, we're doing this work to bring the community together. It came from a very selfish place because I've been living on Bitcoin for quite some time now, and I'm able to do that through a number of services that help bridge that gap and allow me to get things through gift cards or pay bills online, and a company will facilitate that for me. And that's all well and good. But I also recognize that there's a centralization there where they're serving the interim, where I can't just go to anybody and buy everything that I need. And I need somebody to facilitate that. Uh, but that is prone to censorship, right? Like if I have to go through a company in order to survive on Bitcoin, then all it takes is a bad regulation saying you're not allowed to do that anymore, and I'm shit out of luck. And so the goal here was to be able to source things as much as I can locally for all the things that I actually need day to day. And so I put out the call to the community here in Calgary, and damn, they stepped up. And so we've had 4 markets at this point. And we try to, I think what we settled on is we're going to do it twice a year. One around Christmas, because everybody loves a Christmas market, and then one in and around the start of summer, because we have the Bitcoin Rodeo, which is a conference that we have here locally as well. So have one on each of those. And the goal here is to have, yes, the market that is exciting, that everybody goes to. We all come together and it's an event, and there's other events around it. And we have people visit us from across the country and all this cool stuff. But it's also to have a network here in a city. And it's unique in that something like El Zonte, Bitcoin Beach, relatively small. The task of being able to turn that into a place where you can live on Bitcoin is, let's walk down the street to every merchant and orange pill them and get them to accept Bitcoin and everything. The task of being able to live on Bitcoin in a city of 1.3 million people, which is mine in Calgary, is everybody is so spread out that you need to have a network that knows each other, so that when you need a particular thing, you can reach out to the person that provides that thing locally for Bitcoin. But like, so now I can get beef, eggs, chicken. I can get, my wife gets her like tallow skin lotion and all that kind of stuff there. My barber accepts Bitcoin. We have a personal trainer that comes to the house every week that accepts Bitcoin. I have a 3-year-old son, and he likes to shove stuff in the toilet. I have a Bitcoin plumber. He's been here a few times. So like, roofers, tradesmen, people that help you learn how to build your own homestead. Like, there's all of these really cool, unique. We have hypnotherapists. We have masseuse. There's all kinds of different actual useful services that are being provided here. And it's just been built over the past calendar year that we've been able to do this. And so the last market that we had 40 vendors all together, and we ran it from morning till mid-afternoon, and just all of these different kinds of things. We had people. I'm in Calgary, and Canada's huge. Just to give you an idea, if I were to drive from Calgary to Toronto, it would take 4 days. But we had somebody fly in from Toronto and from Montreal, which is even further. We also had somebody come in from Vancouver. We had people coming in from Edmonton, which is 3 hours north of us. We had farmers coming in from Lethbridge, which is 3 hours south of us. We had people coming in from across the country to be a part of this thing. And it just seems like the snowball is just starting to roll down the hill and grow in size and speed. And so I'm I'm so passionate and excited about this. I think it's such an important thing. And I want to see people not only come and visit us, so please come and visit us at the SAP market, but to start to take notes and replicate it where they are, because that's how we win. That's what happened to El Salvador. It wasn't, yes, it's great when you get a favorable government, but what was the spark that started that? It was a small community, a small beachside community that just flourished and began this Bitcoin journey, a local community, a local circular economy that just popped up and people started paying attention. And then it just spread like wildfire to the point where a president of a country said, we're adding this as legal tender. So I think we all need to get that El Zonte mentality, and we need to apply it in different ways depending on where we are. And just because you're in a big city doesn't mean you can't do it. If you go look at Vancouver, Vancouver is one of the cities where the most merchants accept Bitcoin on the planet. And the reason that is largely attributed to one dude who just runs around the city. And his name is Cole. He works at Coinos, which is like an awesome merchant wallet. And they just canvass and encourage people to accept Bitcoin. That dude has done more for Bitcoin in that city than most people on the planet have done. So like, hats off. If Cole watches this, hats off to him. But we need a Cole in every city. I'm not the Cole. I'm doing something different. I'm focused kind of on the Bitcoiners and corralling them into realizing that they have skills and products and services that they already offer. They may as well accept Bitcoin. So I'm a different approach, but I would love to have a Cole in Calgary that would just go to businesses and be like, hey, let's teach you about this. But yeah, channel that energy wherever you are and build, because it's so important, and that's unshakable. There's no shutting that down. There's no saying, oh, you know somebody that has eggs and you have Bitcoin. You're not allowed to be friends with that person. You can't have them over to your house if they just so happen to come over for breakfast and I happen to send them some sats out of the kindness of my heart. So like, yeah, that's what I love about it.
That's awesome, and totally agree. We need those to spread, and we need, like you said, people like Cole who will go through and do the one-to-one work to get people onboarded. That, if you have a critical mass of those people, it just makes such a difference. It's such a hard thing to stop if you have the momentum of a community behind this. And as you mentioned, that one-to-one canvassing is super important. And you've been involved in content, which is one to many, for years now, but you've also been working on something recently with the Bitcoin Mentor, which is one-to-one coaching, consulting. And I wonder, one, what is that? Can you describe that? And two, how do you think about splitting your time between giving people one-to-one help and scaling yourself in content? How do you kind of allocate yourself to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so Bitcoin Mentor, just to kind of outline what that is, it is the ability for anybody to reach out on the website there. We've got a team of educators, 16 of us, I think, right now. And so you can reach out and you can say, I want to level up my education. So this can apply to, I'd say, primarily two different groups of people. One would be the newcomer that wants to expedite their learning and just wants like direct contact with somebody who's going to just guide them through and answer every little question along the way and get them set up, and just boom, you're set, and save a ton of time that way. The other person would be the Bitcoin Luddite, is what I lovingly refer to them as. But this is somebody who came into Bitcoin. They love it. They listen to all the podcasts. They do all the things, but they learned like 2 or 3 things way back when. They have their stack and they continue to add Bitcoin, but they're hitting a point where they're like, there's a lot of new stuff. I haven't changed anything about my setup for years. Is it still good enough? Or maybe they're just saying, you know what? Like, it is time for me to learn more and learn what is a multisig, or learn how to run a node, or learn, about other curiosities that I just haven't dove into. Those are kind of the two types of people primarily that we're seeing. We're also seeing businesses and stuff like that. They want to accept Bitcoin. They want to have it on their treasury and secure it. There's that aspect too. But yeah, so this is just the ability for anybody to reach out to us and either do like a quick session to level up on a single skill, or be like, I'm investing in my learning journey, and I'm going to do like a package of sessions, and we're going to go through like a learning trajectory together and attack it. And I'm going to come out the other side of this thing a far better Bitcoiner. And so this is the focus here. Now, you asked about the dynamic of that versus the education on the channel and everything. And so Bitcoin Mentor actually came about because I was doing one-on-ones with people and it didn't scale. It would have been about a year ago now that I was just inundated. I think I went through 30 sessions, one-on-ones, in a month. And I was like, I can't even make videos anymore. Like, I can't, there's no time in the day to do this anymore if this is what I'm going to do. And so Bitcoin Mentor came about as a way for me to hand select educators that already had that spark that I could see. They had honed their craft already. And then I could come in with them, work with them, and ensure that they were even leveling up beyond where they were. And now it's kind of this ecosystem where all of us are educating so much that we're leveling up off of each other, from troubleshooting with we refer to them as mentors and proteges. So we'll come in and say, oh, I worked with a protege today, and we came across this issue. Has anybody ever experienced this before? And then we actually like learn from each other, from the little finicky things, or like, oh, hey, I had a problem with somebody today. This is what this found solution was. So if anybody comes across this, this is actually how it works. There's a bug or whatever. So I'm super proud of everybody over there at Bitcoin Mentor and what they've been able to do. And we have these weekly calls, these weekly powwows where we just like get together and we just riff off each other, and maybe all talk about some new thing that I've tried out, or like, hey, it's worth looking at this wallet. This is really cool, or whatever. So I'll get to chat a little bit, and then we'll just kind of back and forth talk about whatever is relevant that week. So the balance there is that I firmly believe, I personally want every person to be able to level up and learn how to self-custody and use their Bitcoin, to the utmost. And so that's what the channel is for. I'm able to do that and offer a free resource to anybody on the planet to come and just start from scratch and become a hardened Bitcoiner and know all the tools. So that's what that's for. And then Bitcoin Mentor is for the people that they know of the free material. Maybe they've used a bunch of it and they're like, you know what? I need like hand holding here, or I need, rather than dig and sort through all this different stuff and make a trajectory for myself, I just want to come in and I want somebody to lay it out for me. And I'm going to save myself, 100 hours of research, and we're just going to knock it out in 10. And so I think that's what that appeals for, the people that are like, they're valuing their time to the utmost, and they want a fast track to leveling up. That's what Bitcoin Mentor's for.
You're so right. And it's the same in not just the Bitcoin space, but for anybody running their own business, you often will pay for coaching just so that you can accelerate the learning curve and buy back your time in a way that you don't have to go figure it out yourself from start to finish. You could, but if your hour's worth anything to you, you should probably be having someone help you who's got the experience. And one of your early experiences that I would really love to hear about, and I think part of why people pay to get access to people with these unique experiences is when you had a chance to work at an OTC desk. And what, it's one thing to just know the words and know the background of why Bitcoin came about, but it's another thing to experience investor psychology in the trenches and see really what makes people take action. I would love to know why you're so passionate about Bitcoin and kind of what that experience led you to believe about why this is the one thing to focus on.
Yeah, you did your research there. Not a lot of people know about the. I mean, I'm not that I don't talk about it, but yeah. So I did work at an OTC desk back in 2017, which puts it smack dab in the middle of that bull run. Which, for context, that year was insane. Bitcoin started the year in and around, I think, just sub $1,000, and it ended the year at 20. So Bitcoin did a 20x in a single calendar year. And half of that came over the course of 2 weeks in December. So like it went from 10 to 20. So imagine like we're at 100 and 2 weeks from now we're at 200K. That would be basically what happened. But
that's my base case for this year.
Yeah, exactly. But like, so the people have a hard time now picturing that kind of movement. Like the beginning of the year, even we went from like from the beginning of the year to spring, it went to like 4. So like 1,000 to 4,000, which again, in the context of today's price is nothing, but imagine like by March, we were sitting at 400K. Like that's insanity. And that happened multiple times throughout the year, like 4 to 8 or 10 or something. And then 10 to 20, like it was pandemonium. And so I was working at a place where you could come in with cash and buy Bitcoin and everything else, all of the garbage, every stupid coin that was spun up. And that was the ICO mania as well. So like everybody was launching an initial coin offering and people were just speculating on everything. It was crazy. Funny enough, Ripple was higher then than it is now still. So suck on that XRP army. But nonetheless, it got to the point where in December of 2017, I was sat in a room with 3 desks. And this is like pre-regulation on anything. It was the absolute Wild West. Like it was insane. A room full of people, basically shoulder to shoulder, with bags of cash, like just like bags of cash that they were like cradling, waiting to be seen. And most of those people were looking to buy whatever coin went up the most that day. So whatever thing had already skyrocketed, they wanted that. When XRP was $3.50, everybody's like, yeah, give me $10,000 worth of XRP, please. When Litecoin was $350, yeah, I'll take a stack of that, please. It was just whatever. Hey, this ICO launched I'll take some of that, please. Yeah, 10 grand, 20 grand, absolutely. It was crazy too because the bank across the street ran out of cash and had to call head office to request more because people would hit the bank, get as much cash as they could, and then walk across to us. It was unbelievable. I saw degeneracy like I've never seen in my life. And I'm looking at these things, and this is like, keep in mind that the Bitcoin standard wasn't written and released until the next summer. So it came out in 2018. And so there was really no seminal work yet that properly articulated Bitcoin and why it was different from everything else. And so, but as I'm sorting through this and I'm thinking like, what is the point of all of this? Like why am I even here? And so over the next year and a bit, I met Francis Pouliot. I learned a lot from him. Also back in the day then, Vortex was a really awesome content creator and would put out, always did live streams and was really good at articulating why Bitcoin. And so I was able to distill it down to, okay, so why am I here? What's the point of all this? And I came to that one, sound money, very, very important. A cap supply money is super important. I want that promise. Censorship resistant, very, very important. Making sure nobody can stop my transactions or prevent me from accepting money. Also, that's a promise that I need. Cap supply, censorship resistance, immutability. And this is where it starts to play in together, where you have these core promises that you expect, this censorship resistance, this sound money part of Bitcoin. But at the end, the most important thing is that, how do I know, like, how certain am I that those promises are going to be kept? How solid are these rules? Because if they're malleable, then it's nice if it's censorship resistant and sound money for a little bit, but if that changes, it's completely ruined. And so I came to the conclusion that there's a checklist of things that I think are valuable about Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, it's important that has them, but it's even more important that it keeps them. And so if you are running a protocol and using a coin that regularly changes the very foundations of the rules that govern the network, then you've got nothing. It doesn't matter which direction they're going. Again, Ethereum saying, "Oh, we went from inflationary to disinflationary, and now we're actually destroying some of the supply. We're burning the supply, and it's going to be super bullet." No, what you're doing is you're changing the rules of the actual protocol. You're changing the dynamic of fundamentally how the economics of it work. And that's not to speak of when they actually just, basically reversed transactions. So the promises are not worth anything. And so there's no certainty there. So the killer app of Bitcoin, the number one thing that's most important is, yes, the promises that it's made, but primarily that those promises are the most unshakable that they could be out of any other alternative. And so that's what made me hone in on, this is why Bitcoin, because I want these qualities, but I'm also very, very certain that these qualities are not going to change. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
So with that as your backdrop for why Bitcoin, and I completely agree. Thank you. What keeps you motivated and inspired to be on the mission that you are? Because it's one thing to have that realization and put your savings and your monetary energy into it. It's a wholly other thing to be a public facing figure, making content every day, every week, helping people, giving your time and your energy to a space. What is it that keeps you on this mission?
I think, in a way, and I think when it really hit me would have been the first time was in 2021, going to the Bitcoin conference down in Miami. The impact, the thing that made me realize kind of the impact of the channel as a whole was, I had just done for the first time a video on how to run a Bitcoin node. And, I consider that to be an important thing for people to, eventually aspire to do. And the more economic activity that is backed by somebody running their own node and their own copy of the protocol, the rules that govern the protocol, the more difficult it is to get people to change. So if you're trying to change the rules, somebody running their own node with actual economic activity behind it can be like, no, I'm not changing that. And so the thing that struck me that time, it was the first time where I attended an event and I had countless people coming up being like, hey, I saw your video. I'm running a node now. And there must have been, I don't know, over the course of that event, I must have had 30, 40 people come up and say basically that, or some shade of that, or, they've done something. And also I was getting stopped just like, I don't know, like every couple of minutes say, oh, I used your video to do this. I used your video. And so like I had this moment where I just like had to like go somewhere and just sit and just like take it in and be like, oh my God. So the numbers on the screen, they're not just numbers. It's not just somebody, oh, I flicked through and took a peek, and the people are taking action because of this. And I'm thinking, well, I'm looking at the video, and at the time it's like, oh, so that video has 50,000 views, and like 40 people came and told me here that they're running nodes just here. And so then I'm trying to mental math, like how many nodes may have come about because of that one video, let alone, there's like, I think there's like 12, 13 million views across the channel right now on various, like across all these different hardware and multi-sig and all this. How many people have been looking at that stuff and taking their own monetary sovereignty? And it was really something that threw me for a loop, where I'm sitting down going like, oh my God, like how amazing, but also what an incredibly scary responsibility. Where it's like, wow, like there's a video and people like take that and they actually do something with it, and it's protecting their money and all of this stuff. And so the scope of it is exciting, but also scary. And so I guess my takeaway from that is that it's incredibly rewarding to have somebody come up and say, not just, I watched content, or like, I tend to make the comparison of like, comparatively, if somebody came up and said, oh, I liked your silly TikTok dance. That's nice, but what is the actual impact of that? Well, I don't know. Somebody was entertained for 30 seconds. But when somebody comes up and says, I'm running a node, I secured my family's wealth in a multi-sig, I did this, that, and the other thing, that has weight to it. And it actually, I don't discount that, and I never take it for granted. And I think it's important. So to answer your question, yeah, like I'm incredibly driven and motivated to continue that, and to encourage others to become educators too. And that's the impetus for Bitcoin Mentor and basically everything, the work with Human Rights Foundation that I'm now doing. Like I think education is so important, and the more people we can get educated quicker, the better, because those people then go out and become educators themselves. And that's so important. Like the snowball grows and grows and starts rolling down that hill faster. So yeah, I hope that's a sufficient answer.
You don't need any confirmation from me, because you've already heard it directly from people. But I will tell you, in our local community at the local meetup, which I don't live in a large town, but regularly have 30 plus people coming up to talk about Bitcoin. I've never heard your name more often than when I go to those meetups and people are sharing videos. They're talking about the most recent video, the most recent live that you did. And honestly, it's amazing to see that you sitting in a recording studio, thinking about and talking about what is most important to you, can have that kind of impact across the world. We're, I don't know exactly how far away, but hundreds, if not a couple thousand miles away from each other, and you still touch this community. And you've got such a unique perspective, having been in this for a long time, having a artistic soul that you came into learning how to teach people about technology, understanding the world's greatest monetary technology. If you were to close out with a piece of advice from your holistic perspective, what would you tell people if they are looking for just a piece of wisdom from someone who's seen more of this than just about anybody at this point?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing you can do is always continue your learning journey. Always have a next thing in mind, and so that's not as hard as it seems. It is simply lay out where you currently are and what your skill set is. What do you currently do? What do you understand? And then maybe start jotting down some areas where you feel like you've got a blind spot. I don't know what this is. I've heard about this, but I don't know. And just pick one. Don't pick a whole bunch of things. Pick one thing that you want to level up on, and then start there and just start with the bare bones basics. Hopefully I'll have a video on whatever you're looking at, but if I don't, there's going to be probably somebody who does. Or go directly to the people that are building the tool that you want to know about. A lot of people forget that the builders of everything that we use are actually quite accessible. You can reach out to a dev that's building an app and say like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm confused. Like, how does this work?" Not only will you likely get some help along the way, you're also going to better inform them to build things that are more accessible and easier to understand for others. And so the more interaction we can get between the people building the stuff and the people using the stuff, the better, because we're able to stand on each other's shoulders when we do that. So yeah, pick an area, start learning, and don't be afraid to ask questions of anyone that is able to give you a tip or a helping hand.
Love that. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, with my audience, with everybody that you touch with your videos. I know my community is grateful that you exist at all, that you do what you do. So keep up the great work and look forward to the next time we get to hang out. Before we sign off, where can people find you if they haven't already been able to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty easy to find on YouTube. Just search BTC Sessions. You can find me on X and Noster as well, both places that I'm relatively active. And then if you're looking for some one-on-ones, you can always head over to bitcoinmentor.io and you can reach out there. And everybody over there is going to be absolutely awesome. So, yeah, those are the best places. Oh, also check out btcsatmarket.com to see what we're doing here in Calgary.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Look forward to doing this again and seeing you in person.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.